Good evening, viewers, and welcome to this evening where it is my immense pleasure to be a part of. Good evening, viewers, and it is an immense pleasure to be a part of this initiative of Autism Connect. And I express my deep felt gratitude to Autism Connect to include me in this part of this initiative. So I'm Anuradha Deshpande, a mother of a young man experiencing intellectual disability, and I'm also a clinical psychologist, counselor, and a special educator. And I'm founder of Care and Care Life Skill Academy. Care is a one-stop therapy center where I have worked with more than 3,000 children. But this pandemic turned me into a digital disability life skill coach. The reason is that during the pandemic, our children suffered the most when their all accumulated skills started diminishing, and their challenges and frustration started increasing, and parents could not cope up with this situation with so many other things to take care of. That is the time I felt that it's not just okay for me to teach only the children, but also I have to empower parents with life skills so that they are not overly dependent on professionals and they can manage life when they don't have any other support. So when I go to several forums, and it's a mission for me to empower parents as much as possible so that with there are information available everywhere, but to have a guided kind of approach to parents will help them. So I go to different forums and talk about, answer several questions. And one of the most important questions often asked, and which is really bothers parents, are about tantrums and meltdowns, especially. When I talk about meltdowns and meltdowns and tantrums, there are two views. General view where people are not associated, or people who don't know about autism spectrum disorder and people who don't know about meltdowns and tantrums, they think that it is one of the uh, antisocial behavior of people, and it is also attributed to bad parenting. But tantrum is more than just a behavior issue. It has got lot many things to look into. So that is why I chose this topic and present it before you. Can I have the right to share this my screen, please? Okay. So let us go right into understanding what are these tantrums, and how can we know everything about tantrums and meltdowns, so that we first we will know about what are tantrums, then we will know what are meltdowns, and then we will try to understand how is tantrum different from meltdowns. So when we say about tantrums and meltdowns are it is very tough to understand, and it is also tough to prevent them, and seemingly impossible to handle when they happen. So it is overwhelming for not only the uh, person who is going through those meltdowns and tantrums, but it's also very overwhelming and very daunting for parents and caregivers to attend to all these things. So so what are tantrums? Tantrums are very intense emotions and emotional outbursts which displays some kind of frustration, anger, or not able to do certain things. And it's generally exhibited by young children. And usually when they are upset, when they are unable to get what they want, and why they usually we expect that whatever we want for is something we can get it, and if you don't get it, the children get into these kind of tantrums. So how does it manifest? How does this tantrum actually manifest? They maybe in the form of crying or screaming. That child will cry and scream out loudly and express their frustration and distress. It can be in the form of aggression. The child may hate, cake, bite, and also self-injure themselves or throw objects around them. And further, they can throw toys and books. That is a way of they expressing their frustration and anger, and refuse to comply certain things they are expected to do, and they refuse to comply and also comply to request. And sometimes, it's not only manifest in the form of aggression and this thing. Sometimes they withdraw totally, and the child may withdraw from social interaction and become very unresponsive. And another form of manifestation is disorganization. The child may exhibit disorganized behaviors such as flapping hands, spinning around, and engaging in repetitive behaviors. So these are some of the ways these tantrums manifest. So what are the reasons for such tantrum? One is difficulty with communication. Children with special needs often have difficulty to communicate, and when they cannot communicate their emotions, their needs, and their frustrations, then ends up into a tantrum, because they are, most of the time it is because they cannot communicate. The other times is because of their sensory processing issues. Even if they have sensory processing issues, they are not able to communicate that I'm feeling overwhelmed with this noise, and I don't like the texture of the uh, uh, food, or I don't like the bright lights and big noises. When they're not able to communicate, and these sensory processing issues can bother them a lot, which can also result in tantrums. And difficulty with transitions. Many a time children experiencing autism, they have difficulty in changing from one task to another, and changing environment, or even when there are different types of educators coming and teaching them, or different people. So that transition difficulty can also lead to tantrums. And then difficulty in social interactions, because they lack little bit of social skills. They don't know what is expected of them, and they also don't know how to communicate with others, and they don't know how to express and tell people that this is what I want, this is what the social engagement I would like to have. And when it doesn't happen according to their wish, then the result may be in the form of tantrum. And sometimes even medical issues can cause tantrum, where there is extreme pain or discomfort, and that can lead to a tantrum too. So how do you manage this tantrum? Well, most of the strategies here is that uh, identify the triggers. What is really causing? Is it the sensory issue, or is it the communication issue, or is it there is a problem in organizing, scheduling things? All these things can be, first you have to find out the trigger, and once you find the trigger, then you may be able to find the solution for it. And teach communication skills. Your 90% of the battle is won if the child can communicate and tell you that this is what is going wrong with me, and I just don't want this, or I want this. Then it becomes easier for them also to manage. And develop a routine. We all know, many a time there is an argument that structure is not too much structure is not helpful to these children, because they become robotic. But if your child is going into repeated tantrums and episodes of repeated tantrums, then it is better to follow a routine. Whereas when the child knows that this is what is going to happen next, that helps them to cope with these issues, or even triggering a episode of tantrum. Then provides enough sensory support. Sensory support can be in the form of some toys, or you can set the arrangement in such a way that there is no overwhelming sound or a light. So in whatever way your child has those sensory issues, you can get support for them, and use positive reinforcement for every time they again, tantrums can be something when they want something, and they, instead of expressing them properly, they might go into the used behavior, and they can go into tantrums. In such time, even the even a simple or a very small task of asking nicely or without going into tantrum should be positively reinforced. And uh, next is to stay calm. When your child is going into a tantrum, you have to stay calm. If even if you get agitated, that is going to aggravate the situation. So rather, you have to stay calm and think what is going to work with your child. That will help both of you to really coordinate and get the situation under control. And seek support when the tantrum is going out of hand. Then it is better to seek the support of professionals who are working in this field, or maybe they are therapists or doctors who are working with that. Seeking support and helping your child is much more important than you yourself wanting to handle your child. But see that what works for one child may not work for everybody else. So try to find out what really is working for your child, and you can strategize in such a way that your child will have minimum tantrums, or you can eradicate tantrums itself. So now that we have learned what are tantrums, let us learn what are these meltdowns. So meltdowns refer to an intense and often overwhelming emotions. It is more stronger emotions, and it is a response to a situation or stimulus that leads to a loss of control over their behavior. They try to do, but it's so overwhelming that they lose control of what is happening, and that is a serious kind of thing. It's a very strong kind of emotional outburst. And during a meltdown, a child may be extremely agitated, anxious, or upset, and may engage in self-injurious behaviors such as hitting, biting, etc. They may also become nonverbal, have difficulty communicating, and may have difficulty in calming down itself uh, since the meltdown starts. So the causes of meltdowns are more or less same as the tantrums, like sensory needs, and also lack of communication, most of that. And strategies also, most of the strategies are similar, but there are some additional strategies to work with when a child has a meltdown. Teach coping skills. Your child has to be taught with coping skills where such as deep breathing, counting 1 to 10, or reverse counting, or visualizing a calming place to help them self-regulate when they become overwhelmed. And practice self-care. Parents have to, and caregivers should take care of themselves to avoid burnout, and to be better able to support their child during meltdown. Because a tantrum can end the moment the child gets something. We are going to look into the differences between tantrum and meltdown. But right now, what we will see here is to avoid this meltdown can be longer, and it may take a lot of effort on the parents to understand what exactly the child is going through. And so you have to build that uh, kind of resistance, and also the kind of resilience, so that you don't burn out yourself, and you don't get agitated, and you also contribute to the meltdown aspect of your child. And so actually meltdowns and tantrums can look alike at the first glance, especially when your child is in the um, if your child is having a tantrum, then it can be very confusing that whether it is a tantrum or whether it is a kind of a meltdown, but the two are actually very, very different. So this episode, I just want to bring the differences between the tantrum and meltdowns, so that they can be addressed in a different way. So meltdowns and tantrums look alike at the first glance, especially when your child is in one, but the two are actually very different. This is particularly true for children with sensory processing issues, like those with autism or who lack self control. Knowing the difference between a tantrum and meltdown can help you to respond in a supportive and meaningful way. So, what are the differences? A tantrum stems from frustration for not getting something or wanting something at that moment. Either the frustration at not getting what they want, or not able to do what they want, or not able to communicate what they want properly, but they're always goal oriented. They want something and they are aiming at something. So, in a tantrum, there is always a purpose which serves by getting into a tantrum. Whereas a meltdown, on the other hand, is all about being overwhelmed all the time. When they reach a point of sensory, emotional, and information overload, or even it is just too much unpredictability, it can trigger a variety of external behaviors that are similar to a tantrum, but it is more than a meltdown, more towards a meltdown. Or it can trigger a complete shutdown and withdrawal. But let us talk more about meltdown. So, meltdown is when a little bit of sensory overload happens, and when your child, suppose your child wants, don't want certain things, certain type of food, and the child is throwing a tantrum. The moment the food is removed, your child will stop that tantrum. But whereas in a meltdown, what happens is that all sensory thing is so much high that the child doesn't even understand what's happening. And this kind of overload, sensory, this kind of overwhelming can happen because of sensory things. It can also happen emotionally. The child is uh, the child is confused about certain things. The child is angry about certain things, or the child doesn't know what is happening, and it doesn't understand what kind of emotion they are going through. But it's so heightened that they can get into a that they can get into your emotional kind of overload, and they can get into meltdown. And information overload, when you're constantly going on giving them certain instructions after instruction, and you expect them to follow it up, that kind of information overload can also get into a meltdown. So if your child is having repeated meltdowns, this is where you have to look for a trigger, whether is it sensory overload, or is it information overload, or it is something emotionally uh, daunting for the child, and too much of unpredictability. One day, especially it happens to children who are attending mainstream schools, and they are so many things happen one after another, and they are not very sure about the structure of what is going to come next, and that becomes that a kind of unpredictability can trigger a lot of anxiety in them, and that can lead to a tantrum. So the next this thing is, first is goal oriented, and the second is age of occurrence. A tantrum is a willful behavior in younger children. Therefore, they can be shaped by rewarding desired behavior, and usually reduce when the child grows older. Whereas a meltdown can occur across the lifespan and isn't impacted by reward system. And meltdowns may never go away in some cases. You can manage it, but it may not go away, and it can occur across the lifespan. And next is need for an audience. Tantrum behavior will usually stop when the behavior is ignored and the child is removed from the public view where the behavior is occurring, or when the child gets whatever they want. They always need an audience. When the tantrum is there, they need somebody to pay attention to, they need somebody to look into them, and they want something, and they willfully, like we said, it's goal oriented, right? So once the goal is satisfied, then the tantrum might end. So there is a need for audience is something that differentiates between a tantrum and a meltdown. A meltdown will occur with or without an audience. They can occur when the person with autism is entirely alone. They can, and these can be responses of an external stimulus overload. It is not always the internal. Like in a tantrum, it can be an external stimuli, but in a meltdown, it is mostly the internal ones, and they can occur when the person with autism is entirely alone. Also, they are a response of an external stimulus overload that leads to an emotional explosion or implosion. It can be it can be shown and thrown, and it can be exhibited in certain forms. Sometimes it's an implosion where it occurs inside them, and they just withdraw themselves, or it is kind of very disturbing to them internally. And the next is control over the behavior. A child has typically some control over the behavior during tantrum. The child can manipulate how long the tantrum has to continue, and how to extend that, or when it is the right time to stop. When the child knows that all their tantrums are not heeded, the parents or caregivers or teachers, they are not yielding to their tantrum, sometimes they will slow down, and they have a control over that. But meltdowns are out of the child's control. They absolutely, they cannot control them. So it is that is why it is where it needed that you calm down yourself, and see that your child is in a safe place, and they don't get themselves hurt, or they are not in a position where they throw things, or they can bite somebody and injure others. So maintaining a safe distance, but giving them the right space to calm down and be there and surround them, like when they are when you can find out what is triggering them the meltdown, and you can really shift them to a place where, if it is a sensory overload, you can shift them to a place where they are more comfortable, or give them things which will comfort them most. Or if it is information overload, or so many things are expected of them, then you can remove certain things from there. But you have to see the safety of the child, that they are not injuring themselves, while you keep yourselves also away. And you have to be calm to see that the child gets into a calmer state, and still working while you are addressing the meltdown at this point of time. When the child is not going through the meltdowns, you should go and work even in other areas, like uh, increasing their communication level, and also self-regulation level. You have to work on how to regulate their behaviors, their movements, their actions, how to express their emotions. All these things are certain things you can teach your child while you are getting into the kind of meltdowns, when your child is into meltdown and you want to help the child. 5 is measures to be taken. While I talked about little bit of that, the measures to reduce tantrums are often can be directed through incentives, like hugs, or good behavior can be reinforced, or any form of discipline. But measures to help during a meltdown are ensuring safety, like I told you a little earlier. You have to ensure safety of both the child and yourself. And you also have to find out developing a calming routine when they are otherwise when they are not in the meltdown. You should have deep breathing techniques, or listening to music, or whatever, counting from 1 to 10 or backwards, whatever is helping your child. You should be able to teach your child all those things. And coming down and mapping the pattern to reduce the triggers. That is, when the triggers are reduced, then the meltdowns will also reduce, and that will help your child to focus more on what they are doing at that point, or learning at that point of time. So first and foremost is identifying these triggers and reducing them carefully, whether they are communication issues, whether they are sensory issues, whether they are transition issues, or whether there's organization issues. Whatever is this, these triggers are be identified, and they should be addressed. So let us make a tantrum and meltdown free life for our kids, and build skills of communication, sensory needs, and yeah. So and we should teach them how to get into skills in communication, and also behavior and processing and emotional regulation. um, I regularly conduct workshops and other things, and if you want to connect with me, you can just talk to Autism Connect, and we can get connected and for more information on what I do. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions on this, you can always to post it through Autism Connect, and I will be glad to reply not only on this subject or any subject across all forms of disability. I'm very grateful and to Autism Connect to give me this opportunity to be a part of this audience and to get connected with you all. Thank you so much.